show featured a same-sex wedding.
In Canada, children as young as 12 years of age might be able to apply for euthanasia.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
The story of humanity's evolution began about 7 million years ago.
Well, tonight we have a panel of some students, some teens, and some adults that are going to be up here just talking a little bit about tonight. And so I know Emma has put it together just a quick survey. And tonight we've been obviously promoting this for several weeks now. But we've got Dr. Coffman with us tonight. And so Dr. Coffman is a pediatrician at Highland Pediatrics. How many of you go to Highland Pediatrics? So some of you may have actually encountered Dr. Coffman before. And the connection that I have with Dr. Coffman is through the Browns. And so I know the Browns have, that's been their pediatrician for several years. And when I was talking to Emma about who could be a good fit for what we want to converse and talk about tonight, his name was mentioned. And so I want to preface this, right? When you talk medicine, when you talk politics, when you talk music, everyone has a preference, right? Everyone has a certain preference of what they think should happen. So I hope that you'll come open tonight with a little open mind as well. So there may be something that's said that you don't agree with. That's okay. That's okay, right? There's some things that I say that you don't agree with. There's things that you say I don't agree with. And so we have to understand that going into our conversations, there may be a conversation that you don't quite agree with. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and get our panel to come up here and just go ahead and you guys make your way up here. Dr. Coffman, you as well. And I'm going to give this over to Emma in just a second. But we've had, over the last couple of weeks, Dr. Coffman and Emma, I'll have you guys sit here. And I'll have Baylie and Arial and myself, we'll sit on this side. That'll kind of give us spread it out a little bit. But I wanted just to introduce a little bit. So Arial and Baylie and Emma have, over the last couple of weeks, talked about this topic. And I know for sure, just talking with these two ladies, they have some friends and some connections that have gone through some of these things that we're talking about. Mental health, depression, anxiety, that led to even a thought or act of suicide. And so we're going to talk tonight a little bit about what do we do when we encounter somebody this way, or when we're struggling. Maybe there's someone that's struggling tonight that you've thought through this. And so I don't want to take too much more time, but this is just the conversation I want us to be able to talk through tonight. And so there's going to be some staged questions that we've got already planned. And due to the sake of time, if we have some open conversation, we want you guys to be able to ask a question. And then we're going to close around 8 o'clock, 8:10, and we're going to close with prayer, and then we're going to get you guys with your D groups, all right? And so if you're a teen leader D group, I want you, if you're a teen leader D group leader, or small group leader, excuse me, not D groups, small groups, I want you to go ahead and find an adult that you can jump in with, and if you need help pairing that up, we can help pair that up as well. And what I want us to do is be able to talk through some of this, right? But I want there to be some adult that can maybe help guide through some of the conversations if there's a heavy thing that needs to be talked about. And as that's being said, I also want to encourage you with this thought. Dr. Coffman's going to be here afterwards. And so if there's something you would like to ask him privately or personally, I know he's made himself available for a few minutes afterwards as well. And so I'll have him stay up here. And if you have any questions or thoughts or comments that you would like to share, please make yourself comfortable. And I would love for you to be able to talk to Dr. Coffman and talk through some of these things as well. All right? Let's pray one more time, and I'll give it over to Emma, and I'll let her start off with some conversation. Lord, thank you again for the fact that we can come together and have these type of conversations. I know these are things that are sometimes taboo to talk about in church, but God, these are things that I think are so important for us to converse about and to hear not just from a biblical perspective, but also, Lord, from a medical perspective, to be able to hear from someone who has been in the trenches and been a part of the lives of young adults and students and teenagers and children who do struggle with some of these things. And Lord, we know this is real. And so we ask that you would give us clarity of thought and direction. And Lord, thank you again for the opportunity that we have to be able to do this. In your name we pray. Amen.
Is it on? Are we? Okay. So I'm going to have DJ pull up this live poll that I've put together. It's anonymous, but I want all of y'all to participate in it. Our question is, for this poll, have you ever had suicidal thoughts? You can scan the QR code, and it'll say yes or no of how many people. Oh.
My head was in
You got a big head, Dr. Coffman. All right. So the reason why I wanted to have this live poll is, and I want y'all to be completely honest with this, okay? This topic is not something that we need to be joking about. The reason why I wanted us to have this live poll is because you don't know what somebody's going through. And every single one of us could be struggling with thoughts of suicide. Even if they look like the happiest person in the world, they still could be struggling with thoughts of suicide. And when you think about it, you just generally, like, you know, oh, we'll probably only have 1, 2, 3 people who have actually thought about suicide. But this poll is proving that wrong. I just want to let that sink in for a minute. This is our youth group, guys. And I'm not shaming you for this, okay? It's a real thing. And it's something that we all can struggle with at some point in our lives. And I know that me personally, I have struggled with this before. And it is hard. And I've had friends who've struggled with it, with self-harm, with thoughts of suicide, with trying to follow through with suicide. So I'm going to ask a question for Dr. Coffman. Where does suicide originate from? Does it have something to do with a chemical imbalance in our brains? Does it have to do with depression, anxiety, an at-home life that's not probably always the best, or even an at-home life that's too good to be true? Where would thoughts of suicide originate from?
Yes. That's a really complicated question. This is spot on. So it's about 30% of you guys have thought about suicide. That's national average per 2021 data. It's a little higher in females, a little lower in males. Males tend to complete suicide more than females do because they tend to choose more lethal methods. I think when you study suicide, a lot of stuff plays into it. The overarching piece is if you feel like you don't belong. And so when you look at what tends to drive suicide, it's folks who are having a hard time connecting. That's one of the questions that I use a lot when I'm talking to kids is you know, who are your people? You know, who do you go to when you have a problem? Who's your best friend at school? And when you get questions like, I don't really have any friends, or I don't have anybody to talk to, in my head, I start to think, you know, is there some suicide risk here? I think when you look at, we've had a big spike in suicidal attempts with COVID. And so since COVID, the attempts in females has gone up by 50%. A lot of that is disconnection we've seen in society, and so you know, I think a lot of folks are distracted by entertainment and distracted by other things, and where we've kind of lost our ability to be together. So it's exciting to see this many teenagers and adults sitting in a room, hanging out together. When you look at folks that attempt suicide, they tend to have a higher number of what we call adverse childhood events. So bad things that happen to you as you're developing. So an example of an adverse childhood event would be your house burned down when you were a kid, or your parents divorced. You had abuse, you experienced abuse, either from a parent or an authority figure. Living in poverty can be an adverse childhood event. Just simply being a minority in the American culture as a child can raise to the level of an adverse childhood event. There's really good studies that have looked at being a minority, and independent of the minority, but being a lesser group, a smaller group in a larger majority can cause those. Genetics are definitely a part of it. So as you look at families, we look around, and some of us are we're more comfortable in a group. You have people that are just naturally talkative. I'm up here with 4 of them, and so people that just feel it comfortable with themselves and feel comfortable around others. And then you have people that don't. People who like to have one friend, or like to just be at home with their stuffed animals and reading a good book and enjoying a big warm cup of coffee. You have people who tend to be more sensitive, so they pick up more. As a pediatrician, I'm a very sensitive person. That's what makes me good at my job. But at the same time, it makes it harder to go out and live your life, because you pick up more things, you notice more things, you tend to think about more things and worry about more things. You tend to see in cultures that have plenty, there tends to be more depression and suicide. So when you grow up with more, you have a harder time with gratitude, being grateful for what you have, worrying about you're going to lose it. We see that kids are more competitive when they all have plenty. We see that they worry about what they have versus what other people have. So gratitude is a big part of that. And then folks who are not connected spiritually and religiously tend to have more mental health problems. It tends to have a protective effect with mental health problems. And so a lot of different things play into it. So the thing I really wanted was saying all that, I wanted to impress how complicated this is. So as you look at just growing up, like going from being 8 years old to being 18-year-old is extremely complicated. Life is hard. And I think, one of the things I tell parents a lot is many of us are able to create the illusion of safety with our small children. And as your children get to be your all's age, all of your parents are struggling with that illusion is starting to break down. And I'm now seeing that my child is not safe, and I can't make sure that they're safe. And that's hard for parents. I think the other thing that plays a lot into kind of family structures is what your parents' experience was growing up. And so many of your parents that are my age, we didn't talk about words like emotions. We didn't talk about using your words. We didn't talk about it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. Those things were really frowned upon. And so a lot of times, a big part of my job is helping parents get more comfortable talking about those things. But does that help?
And then I know Baylie and Arial have some things to talk about too. I know Baylie has some Bible verses that she'd like to share.
Okay, yeah. So I don't want to do it alone. So do I have 3 volunteers that can read? Oh, come on. It's just the Bible. Here you go, Mary Claire. Genesis 1, 26 and 27. Micah. Philippians 4, 8 and 9. Then Clay. Hebrews 13, 5. Okay, so while they're looking those up, I'll start with my testimony when it comes to the idea of suicide. So in the 7th grade, I had a close friend who randomly came up to me one day at lunch and informed me she was contemplating suicide. And as a 7th grader, that's a bit of a burden and kind of scary to hear, because you hear about it, like people think about suicide, but it was weird and I didn't know what to do, so I didn't do anything. And I went home and got my parents, and they told me I needed to get a teacher involved, so I did. And honestly, that's all that became of it. I got a teacher involved, and I would talk to her, try to help her, be sweet to her, but that's all that really became of the situation. And I just want to say on that note, if you are ever someone who is thinking about those thoughts, get an adult. Someone your age is going through life like you are. They don't know answers like parents or spiritual people do. I know any adult in this room could get you some really good, solid help, but I would really ask you to don't go to another teen, because it's hard for us to handle, because we don't know everything. So, and I still don't know everything, which is why I chose Bible verses to talk about this, because I don't want to give you my opinion. I want to tell you what God has to say. So the perspective I kind of took it, as me and Ariel talked, was more for people who struggle with these thoughts or just simply depression, of, some verses to look into and to think about whenever you do get down on yourself. So, Mary Claire, you want to read yours?
And over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them.
So this tells us we are created in God's image. And that's unlike anything else out there. And I don't know about you, but that's pretty cool. I gave another Answers for Teens about creation, and I spent a lot of time on that. But in simple terms, we're made like God. I mean, that shows he cares. He took the time to make us like him in his image, with a spirit and a soul. So all that to say, we're created with purpose. Another verse that tells us this is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Guys, God has planned out our life every step of the way. He's thought it through. He has a purpose for us and a plan. And I promise you, it's not for you to end it before it's supposed to come to an end. He says in that verse to give you an expected end. He's made your end, not you. So do what God's telling you to do. Follow him. Micah, you got yours.
Whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things, those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me do, and the God of peace shall be with you.
Okay, so all those phrases in that verse are very powerful and very positive. And it's God and the Bible telling us what to think about. And the Bible tells us to think about things that are pure, are true, are lovely. And suicide it's death, y'all. And last I checked, death isn't very pure or lovely or any of those kind of things. So I don't think that was on God's agenda for us to think about. So that's another verse, think about your thoughts. Something Matt's been talking about in one of his what's it called? Growth tracks is, thinking about your thoughts, because it's true. Our thoughts are dangerous and our thoughts are powerful. Think about your thoughts. Another verse, John 10:10, basically to cut it down. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. That was Jesus talking. God is a God of life, not of death. God intended to come to this earth to help us live, not to die. I don't know what else to say. I mean, life is great, and life is planned for you by God. Clay.
Keep your life free from the love of money, and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you.
I will never leave you nor forsake you. And I know for me, I can feel lonely at times. I was struggling with that today, feeling by myself at school. It happens. Everyone is in that boat at some point in their life. But God's always with us. So You always have a friend who's there. So whenever you're struggling, whenever you're feeling down on yourself, because I know that's something that can lead to these thoughts, just know he's always there, and he's looking after us, and he's taking care of us. And finally, this verse that I love it so much. Isaiah 55:8-9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. I've heard that in a song, but those words are beautiful. I mean, God's ways are so much higher than ours. And so, I mean, I know there was a song sung about that in the movie about Joseph and his life, and he sang the song while he was in prison, which, if you know the story of Joseph, that was the lowest point of his life. If there was ever a time for Joseph to be having thoughts like this, it would have been there. But he chose, or in the song, he said, your ways are higher than mine. Sometimes God's plan for us, it goes downhill at times, and that's to grow us as Christians. But it's not for us to start having these bad thoughts about ourselves, about other people, or anything like that, start having these negative thoughts. His ways are higher than ours, and you may not understand why you're going through what you're going through. You may never understand why you're going through what you're going through, but his ways are higher than yours, guys. So just trust in that and know that he's always got your back. And again, if you're ever struggling with this, please get an adult, not a teen, get an adult. They can help you out.
Yeah, that's really good. I just wanted to say one little quote that I kind of like to remind myself is, we train in the valleys. As Christians, we train in the valleys, and we get to rest on the mountaintops. Baylie, was there a question? Any question that you wanted to ask Dr. Coffman?
I guess just what would you say, like, to someone who is struggling with these thoughts? What would be your advice of the best way to get help?
Yeah, so I think there's no shame in being tired or being frustrated or even being hopeless. And I think for parents, don't be afraid of talking about these topics. I think parents always worry if I talk about suicide, if I ask about having thoughts about hurting yourself, that I'm going to somehow make my teen be more likely to commit suicide. That's absolutely not true. And so suicide is something that does well when we don't reach out to others, when we hold it inside, when we don't talk about it. And so, in my job, I see probably twice a day. I have something that makes me really tired and frankly ready to go home and just go to sleep and that be the end of it. And where I would worry personally is to have those thoughts about school's really hard this year, or my relationship with one of my parents is really hard right now, or I'm really sad because of something that's happened. There's no shame in that. And I think talking about that with people you trust, and for most of you, your parents are going to be the safest, most trustworthy person, or looking to others that are trustworthy. I think when I would worry personally is when you're having thoughts about how exactly I would do it. If you're thinking about, I don't want to live anymore and this is how I would do it, that would be a big red line. That's an emergency. That's when we have to get help. I think as parents, when you're talking with your kids, if that's something that is elicited, that they've been thinking about ways that they would hurt themselves, things need to happen right now. I think when we look at firearms, I personally have had experience in our family with a suicide by firearm, and realized that this weird thing we're doing in our country right now with guns, that if guns are available, they are far more deadly. When you look at boys have preference for guns. When you look at completed death by suicide, half of them are by firearms because it's more deadly. And so, to give you some hope, folks that attempt suicide, the likelihood that you would repeat a suicide attempt is extremely low. It's about 3%. So if you survive a suicide, you're much more likely to attempt suicide again than the general population is. And so I think, in looking at if there's guns in the home, one, like, be a responsible gun owner, make sure they're protected, that, you've got them locked up and it's not easy. And then I think if there's someone who's struggling with that in the home, be aggressive in looking for ways that someone could hurt themselves. I think as you guys are in your friend groups, the most important thing to do to prevent this from happening in your friend group is to be accepting and to be kind and to use those kinds of words like, when I'm not with you, I miss you. If you weren't in my life, I would be sad. When we're together, it's something really special. And those are the kind of things when people feel accepted and seen, even something simple as you changed your hair and I really like it. It looks good on you. That's a new shirt. I've never noticed that before. What that tells you as a person is this person's paying attention to me. I have value in their life. And I think as we're in it, this is a community here, and this community has a level of welcomeness or not, a level of acceptance or not. There's a degree of hierarchy or not. And when people come into this community, they're looking for acceptance, they're looking to be known, they're looking to develop relationships with other people. And so just being cognizant of that's what's going on when you're here. And like has been said several times, you never know what other people are thinking about. And then I think, if you're struggling, reach out to those people that are safe. And I think what we're seeing now is that social media and texting and those kinds of things, it gives you guys a false sense of connectedness to people. So I have friends on social media, I have friends on Instagram, I have friends on my Snapchat, and these are my people. And that gives a false sense of intimacy. And most teenagers at some point will overshare information with people online who aren't their friends. And in fact, a big reason for depression, especially in women and girls, is that things are shared that are later used to hurt you. So someone tells you to send them pictures that are inappropriate, or someone once asked you a very personal question that they don't have any business knowing the answer to. And you say, well, we talk all the time, like we DM every day. And you've got to be really careful about the illusion of intimacy with people online and through texting, and looking at how do people really act. Believe people when they show you who they are. When people at school are disrespectful to you, who will choose to sit with other people and not you, when they, one day they're your best friend, the next day they're not. Believe what they're telling you. And everybody doesn't have to be your best friend, but that's not someone you would want to share, important things like, I'm really sad, I don't know if I want to live tomorrow, I don't have any reason to go to school, I'm having a lot of pain. So I think, and parents, I think that's an important thing to really talk to kids about, is who's safe and who's not. And how do you tell who is a safe person and who's not? And it's hard because you guys are COVID kids. You spent a big chunk of your impressionable years, hanging out inside away from your friends. And so you lost a bit of that, how you learn how to do that. This group of parents right now are really protective. We were talking earlier about how many times we broke bones growing up, and other than Jonathan, I'm sorry, Jonathan, I had to call you out. We don't have as many broken bones because parents are really protective. And so I think, as you guys are walking through this, make sure that, when you're hurting, reach out, and know who your safe people are. And so I think as parents, make sure your kids know that. One thing I will add is I've had two real close family members, and one was a person that I spent a lot of intimate time with, and they went and told someone who was not appropriate that they were struggling, and I'd actually been with that person talking about a lot of life stuff the whole weekend before that. And so I think, you know, that's one of those things that I think as families, it's really important to foster that safety and openness, and then kind of, you know, teaching each other and teaching our families who are the safe people, who are the go-to people in our families.
Yeah. And I know that you were talking a few minutes ago about how friends and how that they can, what their words say and their actions, how it can impact each other and acceptance in groups. And I know that Ariel has a few words to say about that and her own personal testimony.
Okay, so I'm going to start with my personal testimony a little bit. So I never thought of suicide, but those thoughts of depression and despair and having adversity in my life, guys, it's okay to feel sad. I'm being really honest. When I was adopted, because I was pulled out of a hard family situation, I was abused. I've seen things that no one at that age should never have seen. I mean, I've seen murder. I've seen a lot. And so it's okay to feel sad. It's okay. These things, I know that if you keep those things inside and not talk to somebody about it, it brews up inside you. And it's okay that you may have gone through something that was bad and that was hard. That's totally okay, because maybe that's God's will for you. But to internalize it and not to get help, it can hurt you, because, you know, for me, a lot of the people that I loved in my life, that I trusted, they were the people who were hurting me the most. And so it made trusting people for me very, very difficult. I struggle very much to believe when people tell me that they love me and are there for me, and to trust them. So you also have to take into account with your friends that if they went through stuff like that, trauma or things, that you also have to take into account that they may struggle to trust you and things like that. And guys, also, you never know what someone's going with. I still struggle with these things to this day, but I have amazing parents I can talk to whenever about these things. And I try not to internalize it, because I've done that before and it makes it way, way worse. And you know what? I was really, really good at hiding it. I was really good at it. So you never know what someone's going through, because they can be really, really good at hiding it. And guys, your actions truly affect people. The Bible says that. You know, shoes are replaceable, clothes are replaceable, homes are replaceable, this church is replaceable. A human life is not replaceable. Once you lose that person, they're gone. You don't get that back. So your actions truly, truly affect others. I mean, I've seen it before. I've personally seen it, how people's actions affected somebody, and it really, really hurt them. And so, like he was saying, kindness is something that's free. It doesn't have to be anything that's difficult. Just being kind to somebody, knowing that you're there, and also being understanding as a friend. You don't want to be that person that, you know, ends up backstabbing somebody when they do come to you for help. You want a person to be able to feel comfortable to opening up to you if they're hurting, and for you to give advice and to be there and to listen. A lot of people want to just be listened to. It doesn't even, with a lot of things, it doesn't even have to be what they're going through. They just want to be heard and accepted. And so knowing that somebody's there for them, that would help a lot of people. And I know a lot of things. I don't have a phone, so I can say this because I watch it. A lot of people, what happens, he's completely right. I've seen it over and over again, that what happens, people text people, and it feels like we're friends, But through text messages, you don't actually know who that person is. You don't know who's on the other side of that screen. You can come across as completely different through anything. And you can come across as completely different on Instagram. You can say you're happy, but you're truly not. You can do these things and say these things, but that can be completely different from who you are. And I know because most of my connections have to be personal because I don't have a phone. And that's a good thing because I see so many kids where they really struggle to make personal connections. And I think that, and I'm not saying, there's nothing wrong against phones. There's nothing, there are bad things about them, but there's good things about them too. But I see kids really struggling with, especially I know with Instagram, because people put on a certain, act or whatever on there, people really struggle with comparison. I'm not like that. I'm not good enough. And, and that comes in kindness in part that people just want to feel like they're good enough. And that's just what some people, that's just what they want. And yeah, like I was just saying, you never know what somebody's going through. And if somebody's having a tough day, it doesn't hurt to ever ask. You may not even really know the person, but it doesn't hurt to ask, like, hey, I see that you seemed a little down today, and ask them what's going on. And guys, your best friends, I don't know what to say, but you want to be a good friend for somebody. You don't want to be that person that ends up hurting somebody and making things worse. And I guess that's just a little bit what he was going off of, just kindness and trying to help people feel accepted. And that's just, I do have a question. And because coming from more of a friend's standpoint and how to help someone from a friend, what can be we kind of already talked about the causes, what could be kind of more the early signs of depression and suicidal thoughts that to look out for as a friend?
Yeah, I think somebody who starts isolating themselves, so you're in a friend group and one person is drifting away, and we all go through different stages. I played a sport. My parents made me play a sport every season, and so my friend group would move from whatever team I was on. I think if you see someone who's getting more isolated, they're not showing up, someone who is, they're passionate about something, and they start to lose that passion, where they're like a huge sketch person, they're always drawing stuff, and you're just always amazed, and then they just don't show any interest in it. Someone whose performance in school, who's a good student, and they start to they're not doing the same way, they're not showing the same level of interest. I think one of the things is, you guys are going through just the difficulty of life. Don't put any pressure on yourself that you have to fix anything. I think what is most helpful is knowing that you have people that are willing to be with you. And so many of the times as you guys are sharing things you're struggling with, the most important thing is just listening. And as a parent, I struggle with, I want to talk. I want to tell you, you come to me with a problem, I want to tell you what to do to fix it. And that's, as a friend, that's often the worst thing you can do. What most people do is they just need somebody to listen to them. And that can be boring, especially when somebody's talking about something that is hard or is, hurting them, and you're like, you complain about this all the time. But it's important to be there for people and listen to what's going on. Active listening. I heard you say this. Is that what you're feeling? Well, now that you tell me back, it sounds, that's not that big a deal. Oh, well, I'm glad this helped, And so listening can be such a powerful tool that you don't really need any special abilities to do, but it changes the world. And I think to your point with, we lose that when we're texting and doing those kinds of things, because it's really hard to listen when you're in that state and when you're not there with someone, because listening is so many different things. You know, you're listening to the way they're saying it, you're listening to how fast they're talking, you're listening, or you're watching what their body's doing when they're saying things. And so I think, you know, I really want you to come away that you really do have a lot to offer. Just listening to each other and remembering those things. You know, how awesome is it when you do share something, and then a couple days later somebody reaches out and says, hey, you know, I've been praying about this since you said that, and how's it going? Like, there's nothing that says you're my friend more than something like that, when you remember what happened, as opposed to you're talking to someone and you're pouring your soul out and they're looking over your head to see who else is in the room that they should be going to talk to. You know, it's stuff like that really cuts you when you're trying to reach out for help. And so I think as you watch your friends, you know, changes where they're ghosting you, they're disappearing, they're falling out of your friend group, they're dropping off in their school performance, they're doing things that they never would have done before, you know, so they start talking about, you know, hey, I've started trying this. Those are things that, like, you know, and what I usually do is just call them on it. Like, dude, like, I know you, like, that's not you, like, what's going on? And just see, you know, what's going on and what they're getting out of it. And then I think, you know, to the point of when you are worried, you know, helping them, like, can I help you connect with somebody? Like, can I go with you to talk to Pastor Matt? You know, can I be there when you tell your parents about this? Like, those are the kind of things that don't require anything from you other than just being there, but can be so helpful when somebody's struggling with hard things.
I was just going to add really quickly a verse, because this is biblical, all what they're saying. I know for me sometimes it's helpful to see where it is in the Bible. Mark 12:31 is the verse where it says you need to love your neighbor as yourself. And that's exactly what they're talking about. So, I mean, for example, y'all's neighbors tonight is everybody in this room. Do you know what everybody in this room in general, very simply, is doing, how they're doing? I probably could say no to that. I'm sure everybody could. You know, I mean, that's just a simple way. Because I know sometimes when you come into things like this, you're like, I'm not depressed. I'm not thinking about suicide. And I don't think really any of my friends are either. Okay, that's fine. Here's a very practical thing anyone could take away. Love your neighbor as yourself. Check in with everyone. Be nice to everyone. Because it's important. And it does affect people. So, sorry. I just wanted to add that.
Well, we've got a few more minutes, maybe about 5 minutes left. Emma, any thoughts from you or last minute questions that you may have before we close in prayer and dismiss in our groups?
I think we could probably do one question that I planted in the audience. Yes, I'm a pre-planner, okay? So for those who have planted Kylie has given them a question, because I did not personally give them a question. Raise your hand. Oh, okay, we're just going to go to Kylie's question. Okay, Kylie, what is your question?
My question was already answered. It was, how can I help a friend who is struggling with suicidal thoughts?
It's for those who have planted questions.
Anybody else that does?
Yeah, which one did not get answered?
She looks really excited.
She's like, oh, yes.
Yeah, really excited. How do I help someone after they attempt suicide?
Let's just say the easiest one for last. Yeah. That's hard. I think so for example, you're back spending time with somebody, or you're hooking up with, meeting up, or calling them, or I think just in your own words, telling them that, like, I'm really sorry this is going on. You know, this is hard. Is really helpful. I think again, we all try to make other people feel better. We try to fix the situation. And, you know, I used to keep a book when I had families who had really sick kids or had kids who were dying. One of the things we would always talk about is like, what's the dumbest thing that somebody said to you today, you know, to try to make you feel better. And so it's hard because we want to help. And so I think what a person who has, you know, you think about that, one, they're hurting. Hopefully they've gotten some services that there's people who are plugged in that can help them spiritually, physically, medically, psychologically, family-wise. And so that, like, I'm really sorry, how are you doing? And really, and then, you know, close it up and lean back and be ready to hear what, you know, people are going to say. That's really important, because what you're saying is, I'm still here. Like, this has happened and I'm not going anywhere. And that's very important for someone who is feeling isolated already, feeling isolated and hopeless to the point that I'm going to kill myself, that you know about this. You know about this whole big thing that I was keeping inside, and you're still want to spend time with me. You still want to talk to me. You still value who I am and what I have to offer you as a friend. Like, that's really important. And just that simple thing of, like, I know how hard this was. I know what's going on, and I'm still showing up to be there for you. That is the most single important thing. I think doing something like this is extremely important, because, you know, who wants to sit around on a Wednesday night and talk about suicide? Like, it's a downer, Emma, okay? I mean, seriously. But what you guys are doing is you're breaking the ice. You know, you're cracking that. I mean, if y'all were like when I was a little kid and you'd see the fire alarm and the glass was there, you know, that you have to break the glass so you could lift the fire. I always wanted to break that glass so bad, you know. And what you guys are doing tonight is, the glass is broken. The glass is gone. You guys have thought about this and talked about it, and you're a little more comfortable with being able, when someone's hurting, to be able to step out and be their friend, and be their Christian brother or sister, you know, to be that listening ear to someone who feels isolated. And so, you know, I really appreciate you guys not just taking the time, but paying attention, you know, and being engaged, because, you know, the time that you spend here tonight, one, it may be the difference of, you know, you guys reaching out and getting some help, making some connection. It may be the difference in you being available for somebody that's really struggling, and that's super important.
Well, Dr. Coffman, I want to say thank you for being here with us tonight, and I appreciate all that you said and just the ideas. And it sounds like a lot of it is learning to set boundaries in our lives that will help us to keep us prevented from this. And I'm one of the 12 of yes. As an adult, have thought through this my own self, and even my lowest moments, that there's been those thoughts of that. And so, to say that, wait a second, aren't you a pastor? Aren't you in the Word of God all the time? And yeah, sure. And sometimes I couldn't think on things that were pure or just or right. So what do? What happens when you get that far, when you just stop? You stop even looking at the Word of God as what it is, and you get to that low point. And I appreciate what you said. Thank you so much. And just to say that none of us are exempt from this. And not to say, I'm not trying to scare you into thinking, oh no, I'm never going to go into ministry now because I don't have those moments. But someone that you would typically identify as someone who's got it all together, right? I mean, hopefully you're like, oh, the pastors, right? The pastor should have it together. And yet there's still times of struggle that we dealt with identity and trying to be something we were not. And so often that takes our mind to, I'm not meeting the standards of everybody else. And so now I'm gonna find another standard. And sometimes the standard drops all the way down to that thought. And so, again, I want to reiterate, if you are struggling with this tonight, or if you need to talk to somebody, I know Dr. Coffman is going to be available. Let's close in prayer. First of all, let's thank Dr. Coffman for being here with us tonight. Thank you. And let's go ahead and pray, and then we'll be dismissed. Lord, thank you.